Welcome to Hope Talk. Today we're going to be meeting with Angie McCauley. Angie is a mom of Madison, 12 years old, that has been living a life, a journey through Trisomy 18.
Miss Madison, look over here at Mommy. Say, I'm going to music therapy. Coming down the hall. I'm excited. Walking like a big girl. You're almost there. You can do it. What you want to say about it? Huh? What you want to say about it? Keep coming. I like how you're standing nice and tall. Yes, I do. Look, you're almost here at the door. Let's open the door up and see if you can get through it. Oh, I gotta open the door the other direction. Get over. Good job getting over. Come on in.
I'm so excited to be here today with Angie McCauley, and we are going to be having a conversation today about her daughter, Madison. And so Madison was born about...
She
13?
is 12.
She's
She will be
12.
13 in April, which is absolutely mind-boggling.
I know.
Completely.
For sure. And right before she was born, she was diagnosed with Trisomy 18.
She was. So when you're pregnant and initially are going through prenatal testing at 16 weeks, they usually do what's called an alpha-theta protein test, which is just a basic blood test. I don't think doctors usually put, a lot of emphasis on it. It's just part of normal routine pregnancy testing. But what that test is really looking for is Down syndrome, which is considered trisomy 21, Edwards syndrome, which is trisomy 18, and Patau syndrome, which is trisomy 13. So that screening really is looking for genetic abnormalities. And it's not really necessarily explained that way, I don't think. Or if it is, it's kind of glossed over and not, discussed a lot. But really, they're looking for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it measures kind of the protein levels in your blood, and they can give you a ratio. So anything that's under 200 kind of flags that there could be a genetic abnormality. Ours came back with a ratio of 1 out of 27. So very high that, there may be something wrong. And from that, we live in Radford, Virginia. So from that, we were sent to Roanoke to a maternal fetal specialist for a level 2 ultrasound, and then also an amniocentesis. So we got to the doctor's office, did the level 2 ultrasound, and they could tell there was a lot wrong with Madison. They knew that she had cysts in her brain. They're called chorioplexid cysts. They knew that she had an omphalocele, which means your intestines actually develop in the umbilical cord and then move into the body. Hers did not do that, so her intestines were still in a little sac outside of her tummy. She had what they call soft markers, which are like folds in the neck and like rocker bottom feet, so instead of an arch, it's kind of like the bottom of a rocking chair. And some various things like that. They knew she had heart issues. They could tell she had kidney issues. So even before we did the amniocentesis, we knew that from 18 weeks on in pregnancy, we knew that we were facing an uphill battle. And then the amniocentesis was done and confirmed about a week and a half later that she did have what's called full trisomy 18.
Okay.
So what that means basically is that every cell of her body has extra genetic material. So she has 3 copies of the 18th chromosome instead of 2. Usually you get one from each parent. So either one of us, we're not sure, it duplicated, and it's not something that's hereditary. It's not something that is passed down to the family. It's just when that cell divides the first time, it divides incorrectly, and every cell division after that was done incorrectly as well because it copies itself. So we knew pretty early on in pregnancy.
That's what I was going to ask you. So you were about 17 weeks pregnant?
18 weeks when it was confirmed,
Okay.
And we knew for sure. And really what happens from there is I was still followed with my OBGYN in Radford, but then we had to go very frequently to Roanoke. And we were really pushed to terminate the pregnancy.
I was going to ask you about that, Angie. I was going to ask you, was it something that a lot of the physicians in your office were familiar with, and did you feel like that they were going through an automatic protocol of recommendation?
I mean, really what is recommended, and I want to say even more than recommended, we were really pushed to terminate the pregnancy to the point that we had to say, stop asking us that question. That's not something that we are going to be comfortable with. And I want to be careful here because, I don't want to be in judgment of anybody that chooses differently. For us, the right decision was to continue the pregnancy. But I think that's a decision, and when we do talk to other, medical professionals or other groups, what we really try to advocate for is informed decision making and team decision making, with parents being involved in that and not just doctors making the decision. Because what we as a society typically are taught to do is trust what doctors tell you, and we just do what doctors tell you. What doctors telling us, we're telling us to end the pregnancy. Because they were, what it's considered and the way it's in a lot of literature is incompatible with life.
The silly goose girls. They've been bouncing together since Emma was old enough to bounce with Madison, a few months old. And now they're 8 and 10 and still love to bounce together and be silly. Let her catch your breath. Are you having fun, girls?
Yeah.
What are you doing together?
What?
What are you doing together?
Jumping up and down.
Oh, they're silly. I see you. I'm getting you on video bouncing with your sister. I'm looking at you and watching you.
Wow.
So, statistically, Madison shouldn't be here.
Right.
The numbers were not on her side. Statistically, 5 to 10, less than 50% of babies make it to birth. A lot of times you miscarry early on, or babies are stillborn. And then of the 50% that make it even alive to birth, only about 5 to 10% make it past the first year. So at her first year of life, we had this ginormous birthday party at the elementary school that I worked at on a weekend, because she had outlived statistics. I mean, she was considered a long-term survivor at 1.
Right. She had outlived statistics. Oh my gosh, I
She
just
did.
so love that. She did it.
So, I mean, she's in, a small minority of children that live to be a teenager. She's going to be a teenager, in, 2 months? And I just, to go back and tell myself then what I know now, I wouldn't have believed it, because everything I was told the entire pregnancy was, she's not going to live, she's not going to make it. We had really... and I use the word fault, and I do mean fault, not just advocated, but we had to fight for a cesarean delivery, because we knew with her having the cardiac issues, with her having the omphalocele, that she would not have survived a vaginal delivery. I strongly believe that she wouldn't have, lived through a vaginal birth, and the doctors knew that, and, they were kind of like, let nature take its course. If that happens, that's what happens, and we wanted to give her the best opportunity and a chance for life. That's what we wanted the whole time for Madison.
So you definitely feel like you were an advocate for your child's life the entire time, 110%.
I mean, we had to be, because otherwise we wouldn't have gotten the interventions that she got. I feel like there was a big difference between prenatally and between after we had Madison, because prenatally all we had were numbers and literature, and it was like we weren't talking about a baby. We were talking about statistics.
Right.
And they were not in our favor. And so I feel like after we had Madison, we still had hard conversations, but there was a baby between us when we were talking. And it changed the dynamic of what we were talking about, because there was a living, breathing child between us, and we're having these really hard conversations. And it just made it feel different. Right. It made it feel different for us, but I feel like she had proven herself enough to get here that they took us. I don't know, it felt different. But, at the doctor's office, we had several experiences prenatally that I wouldn't wish on anybody. As far as like I feel her in my stomach moving and the doctors are literally like going through a calendar and saying if you terminate today, then, you can get pregnant again this soon. And it wasn't what my heart was telling me to do.
Right.
She was my baby, no matter what.
Yeah.
I didn't care if she had 3 heads and 5 arms. I loved her. And I just wanted to have a chance to get to meet her in whatever way that looked like. Whether that meant that, she passed in my tummy, whether that meant, she didn't make it alive at birth, but I still got to hold her. I wanted to have that opportunity for whatever God had planned and let that be, what his plan was, not us making a decision to end something earlier.
And how do you feel like you were prepared for her birth?
We weren't.
Right.
Because they really didn't talk about if she lives, what that's going to be like. Really what was talked about prenatally was the termination and the level of significant disability, that she would have and that she wouldn't live. We didn't really talk about, well, there is this slight chance that she might live and what that actually looks like. That really wasn't discussed.
How did you find that, Angie? How did you find that? Was that just an internal hope, internal trust, internal belief? Or did you start to research, or maybe both, where there was a slight chance that maybe everything was going to be better than the diagnosis that they were giving you?
I did. I am a person that likes to research a lot, so I did do a lot of reading. And I can't remember the exact timeline of when I came across SOFT. It's called Support Organization for Families with Trisomy. Honestly, everything's such a blur during that time period, and we were trying to just get through day to day that I don't remember if I came across that prenatally or if it was after she was born. I really want to feel like it was after she was born because, you have people that in all good intentions are like, well, I know a child that had an omphalocele and here's their story and she's going to be fine. Or I know a child that had, such and such and they're fine. But I didn't know any other children that had trisomy 18 that had all these things at that time, that really were okay. But I did have an experience that, again, is one of those things, God puts people in your life at certain times, and you just have to, you might not know for many years why later, but as a teenager, I actually knew a child that had trisomy 18. So I had some understanding of what trisomy 18 was. And it was a family that was a military family that somehow landed in Rural Retreat, Virginia. I'm talking about a town that has no stoplights and, little tiny area. They actually literally have asked them since then, because we still remain friends, how they landed in a retreat. And they picked a spot on the map. He was retired military, and they came to a place that was just secluded and small and, wanted a different lifestyle than they had moving in the military all the time. But they had, Corey was my age. They had a daughter that was older than us. They had a daughter that was my younger sister's age. And they had Jill, who was the baby of the family. They moved our junior year in high school to the town. Corey and I became best friends. They actually lived in my great-grandparents' old house, which was like the connection of, and for retreats so small, everybody. You can't not know people. If somebody moves in new, it's like, who are these new people?
Yeah.
Nobody ever comes in new, from town.
No.
But I actually used to help babysit Jill when they would go out and, just because she required a high level of care. And she was nonverbal. Even her eyes, I remember being kind of like a cloudy color. I don't think there was like a formed pupil like most eyes. But I would brush her hair. She loved that. And she just had ways to communicate that were different. But Jill had heart issues and passed away our senior year in high school. And I actually read the poem at her funeral that's called Welcome to Holland. And basically that poem talks about, when you're expecting a child, it's kind of a metaphor of, you're expecting a child and expect life to be one way, but it turns out something totally different. So it gives an analogy of you're planning a trip, I think it's to Italy or something. So you learn the language, you prepare for your trip, you're excited, you get on the plane and you get off and you're not in Italy, you're in Holland. and life's a lot slower, and it's so different. You don't know the language. You don't, you weren't prepared for that, but you come to realize that it's really beautiful too, and you appreciate the things about that journey that you weren't expecting or whatever. So it's a really beautiful poem, and really is, true about having a child with medical needs or disabilities. It is different and she was our first child. So, we kind of laugh now. We have another daughter, Emma, who's 2.5 years younger, and we say Emma's kind of our weird one because Madison was what we learned to be parents with. Yeah. She wasn't different to us because it's what we learned from. We didn't know any different. I think it would be a different experience if we'd had older children and had an expectation in our mind of what parenthood was like. But she was our first. So doing all the medical things was just what being a parent was. Right. And so when we had Emma and didn't have to do that, it was kind of like, this is weird.
This is easy.
Well, and I don't want to say easy. It was just different.
Yeah,
I joke and about Emma all the time. She never wants to drink enough or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to get you a G-tube because then I don't have to fight you about drinking. I can just, push it right in. And so, it's just different.
Yeah.
It's just different.
For sure. So, when the baby was born, Madison was born. Here she is. Was there any immediate changes with how the medical care switched gears?
Well, I'm going to back up to a day before she was born.
Okay.
So we, we were seeing this maternal fetal specialist in Roanoke, but my doctor's in Radford. We didn't want to have to deliver her in Radford because we knew there wasn't going to be the level of care that she needed. Okay. But the maternal fetal specialist only does the pregnancy, doesn't do delivery. So he had referred us to a doctor in Roanoke to do a cesarean section, is what we were going for an appointment for a cesarean section the day before we were supposed to deliver her. So we go to that appointment, have never met the gentleman, had no relationship with him, to go into this big momentous day that's coming up the next day. And he looks at me and he says, why are you going to have surgery? Your baby's going to die anyway. So as you can, this is the day before I'm expecting to give birth. I'm sobbing, crying. Micah's ready to jump over the table. The man dismisses himself from the room and comes back in, I don't know, it's probably 45 minutes or so later, like a good while later. And he didn't actually do the surgery the next day. His resident actually did the physical surgery on me. Wow. But even on the forms and all, instead of saying the doctor recommends, he crossed all that off and says the patient request. And, so we had to really fight even for a C-section for her. Mm-hmm. And this is, I had been referred to this man by a doctor that, recommended him to do this surgery. I didn't think there was going to be any question of why we were doing it. But I told him that day and still believe, even if she had not have lived, to give her again the best chance at life, and to be able to hold her even for a couple of minutes and look at her and tell her that I loved her. That's what I was looking for. I never in my life could have imagined she would still be here at 12 years old. I was hoping for 12 seconds or 12 minutes, to be able to hold my child and just look in her eyes. Right. I have never been one to keep a journal or anything, but I did keep a journal during pregnancy. And it was kind of like my way, it was like me talking to Madison, because I did not think I was going to hold her in my arms with her breathing to be able to say those things to her. Mm-hmm. And the last entry in the journal was the day that the night before she was going to be born, and me saying, okay, here we go, right. Tomorrow's the day. Right. But I still have that. But I really didn't think I was going to be able to actually say the things in my heart that I wanted to say to her, and it was my way to communicate to her.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like probably one of the most challenging 9 months of.
Oh, it was. I mean, it was not. I hate to say it, but the honest reality is it was not a joyful pregnancy because our joy was stolen. She went to the doctor and told her baby's going to die. So how can that be joyful? And the day of her birth was not what you would think about births being, a new beginning. My body had kept her alive, and everything we had been told was that her body was not going to be able to keep her alive. And so going into that delivery that day, it was really like the beginning of the end, because my body was going to be separated from hers, and she was going to have to make it on her own, or not, And so we really went into that delivery day thinking, this is probably the last day with our child. Mm-hmm. So it was probably one of the scariest days of my life. Right. It wasn't let's all be together and celebrate and start this new journey. It was thinking this is the end of our journey.
Right.
So it was hard. And so that day, we had met prenatally with a neonatal doctor who, again, went over statistics and all, but we did at least get to have a good conversation with and to say, let's not look at her diagnosis, and can we just treat her as if you would any other child that's born. And we don't know how far we want to go with medical interventions or if we're even going to do a lot of intervention. We just want to get her here, see what she needs, and make decisions as we go.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a pre-planned, we're going to do everything or we're going to do nothing. We just wanted to kind of take things as they came and make decisions as we went.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we've done, pretty much her whole life for her, is just make decisions as they arise. We have to be grateful for every day, because every day we're given, is a gift for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, we are hyper aware of that with Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And just make the best decision with the information that we're given.
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow, Angie. It's struggles that a mother and a parent can go through is hard for other people sometimes to understand.
Yeah.
But I think that in this Trisomy 18 world, it's very evident that you're not alone, and that there are moms out there that every day have to experience and feel, the same emotions and concern. I so appreciate, Angie, that you made us so aware that the first 9 months of life was basically a battle.
It was.
Of you defending life, and how strong that had to be for you. How you had to show up every day, right? You had to show up every day and say, I'm fighting for my child's life.
Well, and, it was such a weird dichotomy of emotions, because we wanted to be realistic about the outcome, but we also wanted to have hope. And I feel like we tried to balance that, or struggled to balance that, all throughout the pregnancy. And I don't think there's any stronger example than the fact that, being realistic, I met with a funeral home. My grandfather actually worked at a funeral home in the retreat where I grew up at. I had met with a funeral home in Radford, had set up everything, basically written an obituary besides for filling in dates and, some blanks. Didn't like the options that they had there as far as an actual casket. My grandfather ordered some through the funeral home that he worked with, and brought caskets to my parents' house and laid on the dining room table, and I picked out the casket that I wanted Madison to be in. I have a purple folder that had poems and songs and things like that I did during the pregnancy, because I thought, when the time comes, I'm not going to have the strength to do this, and as a mother, if that's the only way I get to take care of my baby and do things the way I want to for her, I want to do that now when I can, instead of when I'm a mess. And 2 weeks later, I picked out wallpaper and I decorated a bedroom.
Right.
So, and we had a crib, and we set up a nursery, and all of those things
all of a
too.
Sudden, there was hope.
Well, we did both. I mean, to prepare for either way. We didn't know what the outcome was going to be. We had hope she was going to make it, but I wanted to be realistic, and I wanted to do things as a mother for her too, and not somebody else making those decisions when the time came. So,
I think that's
we faced both realities.
Right. Well, I think that's a beautiful approach to parenting. You had a beautiful approach to parenting to say, this is how, as a parent, as a mother, I can give you my best care. And so I think that's very honorable that you did that. So
it's a hard reality, though, to think of any pregnant woman having to go to a funeral home.
It is.
It's just an awful thought to have to even to face that, and to do that for a child that you love so much. But it was just part of what I felt like I needed to do to be prepared. I'm a person that likes to be prepared and think about all possibilities, and it goes back to that wanting to have research and things like that. But it's very emotional for sure. But then talking about the difference of when she was actually born. So I did have the C-section. So we were at Renwick Memorial Hospital. They did honor, to do the C-section. Like I said, the resident, not the doctor itself, did the surgery. And we had talked with the team ahead of time and told them our wishes to just get her here and let's see where we're at. One of the nurses actually took my aunt's camera, and I have pictures of the entire delivery. She took pictures the whole time, thinking that might be the only pictures that we have. And that nurse prayed and prayed and prayed with me during that surgery. And so I just feel like, God's hand was over the whole thing. We got Madison here. They tried to intubate her because most of the babies need some, or not all, but some, they expected her to need some breathing support. She, in her stubborn way, fought against that, and they couldn't get the breathing tube placed. And they realized she's actually, breathing on her own. Now, her first apnea score wasn't great, but the one that minutes later was better. So, she was stable enough to go on to the NICU. Micah went with her to the NICU, and they finished up my surgery and all. And so I didn't get to see her then. I got to see a quick little peek of her, and, a funny story. You think of all this big medical stuff that's going on. She had that umphalicele. The immediate concern after she was born was if that were to rupture or anything, it would get an infection. So they wrapped her up in gauze, and they literally took saran wrap, like legit you buy from the grocery store saran wrap, and wrapped her in saran wrap to cover up her little umphalicele in her tummy area. And then, she went on to the NICU. But then we knew the first decision we had to make was, what are we going to do about the umphalicele? Because if we did not do anything, it would become infected. And, that would cause her to pass away within probably a matter of days. So, love her heart, she was born at 1:03 p.m. on a Friday, and at 7 o'clock that evening, she goes in for her first surgery. So, my second time of seeing her, besides just a little glimpse, is she was in the little incubator, and I was in my hospital bed, and we rode the elevator up. I think it was the 11th floor at the time, and, I got to send her off into surgery and thinking again, this is giving you the best chance at life. I don't know the outcome of this and how this is going to go, but if you're going to make it, we have to do this to give you a chance. And so she had her first surgery 6 hours after she was born, and they put her little, intestines back in her tummy and took her appendix out to make room and made her a little belly button. And during that hospital stay, I remember when the surgeons kind of chuckled with us. We happened to be in an elevator at the same time, just by happenstance, and he said, only God can make good belly buttons. He's like, I tried, but you can still tell there's a little black thread where her, belly button would be, because she doesn't have a typical belly button, from where she had that surgery. But he said, we just can't make belly buttons the way God makes belly buttons.
Right. I love that. I love it. I love too, Angie, that you're always saying, this step that I'm going to take is the best chance of survival. Every single decision you just tried in the moment, make the best decision that you could. Not really knowing if it's going to be perfect. This may not be perfect. This may not be right. But I've got to go with my intuition and my heart. So much of it sounds like your journey was just really trusting.
Well, and that's all we've had to go off of is hope and faith that we're doing the best thing that we can, without guarantees, but knowing that, our goal was to give her the best chance. Without that, we knew she wouldn't have made it, and with it, it gave her a chance.
Right.
So, she's had several surgeries in her little life. So after we got through that period of the umphalicele surgery, we were in the NICU for 31 days after that. Okay. And anybody that has experience in a NICU, it is a roller coaster ride, to say the least. So she was born at 4 pounds and 6 ounces. Small, but in the NICU, she was monster sized, because those babies are, 1 and 2 pounds and itty bitty tiny. So she was pretty decent sized in comparison to NICU world. But there were a lot of other things that were going on at the same time. She had all these other issues that we had to consider and think about. But in the NICU at the time, they thought she had some liver issues. The name for what they thought was called biliary atresia. And so, we had, I can't tell you the hours of conversations that we spent with neonatologists. And I like the approach they took with this, because while there were 3 neonatologists that kind of circulated, there was one doctor that came and would have the hardest conversations with us. And that, we made that relationship with him, and I still stay in touch with him. He's not in this area anymore. But I feel like that relationship and that trust level and those kind of hard conversations, which again, Madison, I'm holding her at this point while the doctor's sitting on the stool and talking to us about these really hard decisions we have to make. But there's a child between us at this point. So there were two big things: the cardiac issues, which if she had what's called a VSD, an ASD, and then her PDA valve, which usually clamps at birth, didn't close. So she basically had 3 holes in her heart. We were told, and what happens for a lot of children with trisomy 18 or other genetic abnormalities, is they aren't offered medical interventions. And so even the fact that she got surgery the first day she was born was a huge opportunity for her that most children aren't given. Open heart surgery, we were told we wouldn't find a surgeon, to do open heart surgery. That, babies aren't going to make it anyway, so you fix one thing, there's still all these other things wrong. So, we were told we probably would hit a barrier of her having the opportunity for open heart surgery. But even before we got to that, there were these issues they thought with her liver. And so we decided through, again, hours and hours of conversation, that after the time that she was there, that we were going to come home and just have time with her. We were not planning to pursue any other interventions. So when we decided to come home, that we were not going to pursue any other medical interventions, like I said, we had had people around us from 18 weeks on in pregnancy. We had not had time just for us to even enjoy a pregnancy, much less a baby that we have, to just enjoy time with her. So we decided we were going to come home and just enjoy however many days we had left with her, which we were told was not going to be long. They offered us hospice, but we declined that. We said, we have been surrounded by people this whole time. We just want to go home with us. We have a lot of family that hasn't got to meet her. We just want to have time alone with our baby. So we came home. That weekend, my great-grandmother and my grandmother came down, and my parents came, and they had been to the hospital, but my extended family had not. And I wish I could say that was such a wonderful day, and it was in so many ways, but it was also so stressful. Like, Madison was running a fever, and Mike was ready to go back to the hospital. I'm like, we just came home from the hospital. We decided we weren't going to do anything else, and so there was this battle between us going on of, do we run back to the hospital when something happens? Do we not? Knowing that there are going to be things that happen at home. We weren't really prepared for all of that. We had all this family around that was happy to see her, but we were struggling with, what do we do? Taking care of her, not being sure what we were doing as parents. So it was just, I'm not going to say that there was this beautiful, peaceful time at home. It wasn't. It was stressful. But we did get I have this picture that I will treasure forever of this 4-generation picture of my great-grandmother and my grandmother and my dad and me, actually 5-generation, and Madison in my arms. Amazing. That who has 5-generation pictures? No people don't do that. No. So to have opportunities to have done that, I'm so thankful for. And we were still, although we had said we weren't going to do any other big interventions because they didn't think there was anything they could do to fix this biliary atresia, we were still going to specialists, and honestly it was 2 or 3 times a week going to GI specialists and things in Roanoke. So we were still on the road a lot, back and forth. And in order to even come home, although we weren't pursuing any kind of other surgical interventions, she came home with an apnea monitor. She had an NG tube because she was never able to eat orally. And our initial intention was to place a G tube, but because we didn't think she was going to make it that long, we didn't want to put her through surgery for that. So we just went with the NG tube that she had, from the first couple of days of life. So she had the apnea monitor, she had the NG tube and a pump, which had her food coming through that. She had she had a pulse oximeter on her. So she basically had a lot of the same monitoring tools that we would have in the NICU at home. So it wasn't like we were walking around with this baby free of tubes. It took a good 30 minutes to make it from, our bedroom to the couch because of all the equipment and stuff that we had. And we had a nurse that came, I think she was coming once or twice a week to kind of check in on us, make sure we had equipment and supplies and that kind of stuff. But we didn't want somebody there all the time.
Right.
or the hospice
Right.
intervention at that point,
Right.
which probably in looking back now, I would think differently about that.
Okay.
I don't want to push people off of the idea of palliative care or hospice care. We were just overwhelmed and we needed to have time of just us. But I would, thinking back now, I wish we would have had that support. We probably wouldn't have felt so conflicted and unsure of what to do because we would have had people supporting us through that.
Right. Got it.
So in hindsight on that, I wish maybe we would have taken advantage of that. But there's also, I think you have to look in your area what's available, because some hospice systems, really encourage you not to then follow up with doctors or, but in palliative care, you can still have interventions, but they also help you through end of life as well. So I think you have to know what kind of programs are offered in your area and be aware of, what you're getting into, because different services are offered, depending on what's provided in your area.
At what point, Angie, did something change with your doctor's office visits, or was there like a time frame where all of a sudden maybe they started to say, well, maybe this is looking kind of promising, let's do some interventions?
That's
for
exactly
her?
what happened. She outlived the timeline that she should have if she truly had biliary atresia. So there were times that she would be symptomatic, which would be like white stools and different things like that. And other times she didn't have those symptoms. And so by about 3 months, they were like, she would not have lived if she really did have this. We got to figure out what's going on. And so with her GI team and the specialists we had been seeing, she was scheduled for a liver biopsy that would have been able to determine, yes, for sure she has it or no, she doesn't. So she goes in for this liver biopsy. They look at the slides, and she does not have biliary atresia. She had an abnormal gallbladder. It had a stalk on it. And when the stalk was twisted, she was symptomatic. When the stalk was not twisted, she was not symptomatic. They took her gallbladder out. That remedied that issue.
Wow.
So she is on the table in surgery. She does not have biliary atresia. She is not going to die from that now. She already has opened up in the place where a G-tube would be placed. They knew that was our initial intention, so they come out and talk to us and say, your child's not going to die of biliary atresia. She doesn't have biliary atresia. Her gallbladder is out, which was the problem. Do you want to place a G-tube? Wow. This is a lot to process as you're sitting in a waiting room and you're trying to figure out, what do I do now?
Right.
She's not going to die right now.
This is great.
Okay, yes, place a G-tube. Our daughter might live. So, that was a huge shock. So they did place the G-tube since she was already open there. And because of her anatomy, they had to do a little different placement than for most kids, because where they put the omphalocele back in, they had to, it was a little more intricate placement than for most kids. So we then come home with a child that has a G-tube button instead of the NG tube. So she had less on her face, which was lovely.
Yeah.
She's getting better nutrition, which is great. But then we have a child also, because she's getting better nutrition, her body is having to work harder trying to grow, and it sped up her cardiac issues. So the G-tube was placed at 3 months. We had been following with cardiac specialists, but that had really kind of been on the back burner because, we didn't think she was going to make it, and we were told she wouldn't ever be a candidate for open heart surgery. But so she got the G-tube in June. By the beginning of, the end of July or so, through July, she had started to require oxygen full time. She was staying molted colored and blue. So actually, in her getting better nutrition, it sped up the cardiac issues. It just put more stress on her heart, which is a weird thing to think about, but her body was having to try to just work harder to gain and grow where she hadn't been able to really do that before. So the doctor we had been seeing that had been telling us no, that she, would not be a candidate for open heart surgery, we thought was like on vacation or whatever that summer, and a different doctor had stepped in, a doctor that we really liked, and we're going to continue seeing from there on, still in the same practice. Unbeknownst to us, we found out actually several years later through doing some medical talks at the VT School of Medicine that within the practice, that doctor did not agree and was not going to help support our decision to pursue interventions. The other doctor was a great advocate for children with disabilities and stepped in and took over, and had actually had 3 doctors that had said yes prenatally, And that's why Madison ever got the Villi surgery. That's why, she got the liver biopsy. And ultimately, she did have open heart surgery because the team of doctors, we didn't know, but they knew ultimately there was a doctor that had said yes to do cardiac surgery if we got to that point. So Dr. Joelle Miller had taken over her cardiac care in Roanoke, and August, I think it was the 4th, we traveled to UVA, and Madison had open heart surgery. So they had to use a patch to close her VSD. They were able to suture her ASD, and then they clamped her PDA valve closed. And again, with that surgery, it was a life or death situation. She was starting to develop what's called pulmonary hypertension, where like your valves are working so hard, they kind of basically harden. And your lungs kind of get stiff because they're having to work so hard. And if it goes too far, it can be irreversible damage, and it can be too late to get open heart surgery. So there's kind of a window of time there that you have to work within. And so some families that are trying very hard to advocate for their child and are being told no, you get no from many different places, you lose that window of time even. So, there were a lot of things that just God put the right people in our path to make that happen. It's not that parents haven't tried to advocate hard enough, but they haven't had the right doors open to them.
That's a good point, Angie. So it seems like that there are doctors that will support children with disabilities and will go the extra mile, but you got to find them.
You got to find them, and you got to have the right networks to get to them. There are roadblocks that can be put in the way. But there's one doctor right now, or actually a team of doctors, but his name is Dr. Hamill. He's a cardiac surgeon, or there's a fancier name for his whole team, but he's in Omaha, Nebraska, and like children with trisomy 18 or trisomy 13 are flocking to him, and they are welcoming them with open arms because he is one of the doctors that is hugely advocating for kids with these conditions to get open heart surgery. And he is proving through providing the surgery that kids can live a lot longer when they're given the same kind of surgical interventions that somebody without a genetic predisposition can get. And it's just incredible. I actually watched a video of him talking just the other night. I came across it. And it's about a 45-minute video, and he goes in depth of all the different, cardiac issues that are common for trisomy 18 and trisomy 13. But because people have been flocking there, they have developed a whole specialized team just around trisomy 18 and trisomy 13 at their hospital. And have, they're honestly, I think, paving the way of what it may look like in the future for other teams to consider that, these children are valuable and can live a good life if they're given the opportunity to. And again, when we passed Madison off that day for open heart surgery, we had no guarantees. We were told that, her likelihood of coming out of the surgery, they couldn't really give us a number. But we knew without it, she was struggling and wasn't going to make it much longer. With it, it was a chance.
It was a chance.
And so, we really had to just take that step of faith again and believe in our heart, no matter the outcome. We were doing our best we could to give our daughter a chance.
I love that, Angie.
And after we left, we were at the hospital for 2 weeks at UVA after that surgery. The hardest part was weaning her off of all the medications that she was on, but she healed beautifully from the actual heart surgery. It's amazing.
Wow.
And so now she's seen by a cardiologist every 2 years.
Wow. Her
heart function is considered great. She has minuscule leakage in one valve that they said probably anybody that has, their heart checked out as thoroughly as she has probably has some amount of leakage somewhere too. And she's considered in very good cardiac standing, which is just amazing.
It is.
And without that, we wouldn't be here with her being 12, almost 13 years old.
Right.
So what, some of those doctors that are willing to kind of, take that chance, and what Dr. Hamill talked about in that video, which I think is so important, and again goes back to what we try to advocate for, is that informed decision making of parents, and letting parents be involved in their decisions for their children instead of just being told this is an option or this isn't an option. Getting to weigh all the risks, the possible benefits, and make the best decision for their family, because they're not just with genetic issues or I think that's true for any of us. We all want to be able to make the best decisions, whether it's for our children or for ourselves or for our parents. And if we're given all the information and can weigh that and whatever our belief system is, and make the best decision we can, no matter the outcome, you're going to have more peace about it than if those avenues are blocked or you're told you can't have access to that. The struggle that families go through with that when they're not given the opportunity, it's heart-wrenching, and so at least you feel like you can't control the outcome, but you can have some say in what happens for your child. I think at least brings a sense of peace that you've done the best you can.
How do you think that Madison's story has already started to affect the way the medical world perceives a child with trisomy 18? To me, it has to be significant.
Well, there are lots of Madisons out there. Madison's not the only one. I could name off billions of children. Well, not billions. I can name off a lot of children in our world or community that are making an impact in their area or their state or their region. And I just think that the biggest thing that we want for every child, as a parent, is to feel like your child has value. And so we have, we've talked to medical students at the Virginia Tech School of Medicine. Since it's opened, Madison's been a cardiac case study, and her cardiac surgeon or cardiac specialist, Dr. Joelle Miller, specifically chose Madison for pediatric case study. She said, we can't change doctors' minds that have been working for a long time, but we can change first-year medical students' minds and set how they believe about, conditions like this, where it's hard to change somebody's practice for 20 years and, has older research to look at. So we've been given that opportunity. And so we've done that now for 10 or 11 years, however long the school's been open. And each of those physicians goes out to a different specialty in the world. And while they might not talk about Madison in their practice or even trisomy 18 in their practice, I hope that, her story crosses their brain when they're talking to families about whatever condition they're facing, and it just brings them a little bit more empathy, in the talks that they have with families, or even a person going through, if it just can slow them down and bring empathy into the conversation and some understanding, then Madison's purpose has been fulfilled. We've talked to educational students and nursing students at Radford University and at New River Valley, and again, just bringing that sense of informed decision making, that's our goal. And I think that is Madison's purpose in life.
Absolutely.
And that's why we enjoy doing things like this so much, because it just brings awareness, like I said, to trisomy 18, but also just, we all have challenges in life that we face. And people have said, well, she's only alive because of, what we've done. That's not true. There have been a lot of things that have come together in Madison's life, and other families that don't still have their child in their arms fought just as hard, loved just as much, and didn't do anything wrong. It's just, for whatever reason, the pieces have fallen into place for Madison to get the right kinds of care and the right people to be there. And God still has her on this journey for whatever reason. I don't know.
Right.
But I don't want any family to ever think that they didn't do enough for their child. So I don't like that when people say, well, it's because of you. Well, it's not. This is still the path that, God has her on.
Right. This is beyond human influence.
It is. Yeah. It is. And I fully believe that. And I don't want any family to ever feel like, the decision that they made was wrong, or, that there could have been something they could have done differently, because we just have to do the best we can with what we're given.
In the moment. Right, in the moment. And do you think that would you encourage other parents to talk to their doctors about, that are on a similar journey, where there are successes and they're finding breakthroughs in the moments of the daily lives of their child, that they could reach out to other universities in their areas, or, certain, teams of doctors to say, hey, we would love to tell you our story.
Absolutely. I think that human story is powerful. And again, I was a special, well, I don't even talk about this. I was a special education teacher because of Jill, the little girl I mentioned, that had trisomy 18 that passed away. So I thought I was going to go to Radford to be a nurse. I ended up changing my first year to be a special education teacher, a lot of that because of Jill. I still have, like your senior year paper you have to write in English about somebody that influenced you or changed your life or made an impact on you. I have that paper I wrote about Jill. So I had been a special education teacher for 8 years prior to having Madison. And so I think God put all those things in my life too. You know, back from in high school, you know, that my path was determined to be a special education teacher, have an interest in nursing, have an experience with a child with trisomy 18, to be Madison's mom. That was my purpose in life, I feel like. And he put all those things together to prepare me to be her mother.
Right.
And I think we can all look back in our life and take a step back and think, gosh, that's why that happened, or that's why this happened, or, you know, I never questioned, I can't say I was ever angry about it. Sad, sure, but I can't say I was ever angry about it because I felt like I could take that step back and see how God had put all these things in my life to get me to the point of being her mom. And it's made me a better special education teacher, because before that, I didn't have any clue about community resources or, you know, what families experience outside of a school setting. And it's huge, and it can be very overwhelming. And I feel like I can better understand, you know, the journey and path of other families with different disabilities, just because I have some understanding of what happens outside of those school walls. And it can be hard. It can be wonderful and joyous too, but it can also be hard. And so just having grace about, you know, something simple like, why can't they make them wear their glasses? Or why won't they keep their braces on, you know, their feet to help support them? Well, when you have glasses to keep on, braces to fix, you have to do a catheter in a day, you have to G-tube feed, you have this agency that needs to come and that agency that needs to come. And, you know, it's a lot when you put it all together. And people don't understand all of that or know all of that. And so the one thing you want them to do, there might be 10 other people that need them to do that one thing, you know, and so it kind of just compounds. And so you just have to be understanding about where families are and meet them where they're at and help support them. You know, something I'm really passionate about now is finding parent resources for kids with disabilities, or just, I mean, all parents need help and connections. Who doesn't?
I agree.
But, you know, knowing about, like, each state has different waivers, Medicaid waivers, that don't have anything to do with income. So Madison has a primary insurance, but she also has Medicaid secondary. Like, if we had to pay 20% of everything she's had done, we would be living in my parents' basement and, like, never be able to afford to move out and be bankrupt forever. But because she's had Medicaid secondary, that's been huge. And I found out about that through another parent whose child had something totally different. And this is after I'd already been a special education teacher for a long time. But I had to educate, you know, my social services office. At the time, it was called the Elderly and Disabled Waiver. And here I have this infant that I'm trying to ask about an elderly and disabled waiver, and they think I'm crazy. Well, you know, she was eligible for it, and I had to keep going back like 3 or 4 times to prove my case and bring this information to them for her to get on this waiver. So even when you're, you know, at the right place and trying to ask the right questions, even the people that are supposed to help you don't always know, you know, all the ins and outs of services and stuff.
So it's almost safer to go into any appointment, whether it's a doctor, whether it's an office or resource, to go, okay, I'm here to educate as well. You come with a certain amount of information and go, okay, I know what I'm talking about to some extent.
Well, and I would go in and I'd be like, well, I must be wrong. And I'd go back and talk to my parent friend, and I would write down notes exactly what to say, and I'd go back and say, but no, this is what, you know, is supposed to be offered.
Right.
And it was that parent-to-parent connection, which I think is so powerful.
Good.
You know, that cannot be underscored, the power of, you know, moms connecting together, dads connecting together, and just, you know, supporting each other through it. And with Madison being older now, I mean, the reality is when we go to specialist offices, they're watching her to learn at this point. You know, they don't have a lot of trisomy children to follow, especially, you know, in certain regions and stuff. You've got to look at a national or even international level, you know, for doctors to have a lot of experience, because there just aren't that many children that are still alive right now, you know, with that condition. And hopefully, you know, with time and medical interventions being provided and more open, and we'll have more kids with those conditions that live longer, because they've been given the opportunities that Madison's had that other people have not had. Like I said, I think that the tone to that is changing, but that takes time, and it's going to take continued effort and advocacy, for those changes to take place.
It does, right. But everyone that has this same story, everyone that has this similar story could be part of that change right now.
True.
Right. And so you were talking about the parent-to-parent connections. And so what were some of the things that you found that other parents could be part of dealing with or walking through this same path with their own child?
Well, from a perspective of with Trisomy 18 in particular, so we came across, like I said, I can't remember the timeline of exactly when I got to it or how I got to it. I don't know if I came across it in research or if I don't remember how I landed on SOFT, but thank goodness I did. So SOFT is a network of families. It's called Support Organization for Families with Trisomies. And so it's kind of a catch-all for families that have Trisomy 18, Trisomy 13, or other genetic abnormalities. We have a strong group of kids with Trisomy 9. And then there are so many things. It is amazing the more that I've kind of learned through the years that pregnancies turn out as normal as they do more often than not, because there are so many things that can happen. Even within, so Madison has full Trisomy 13, so all of her cells are affected. There's mosaic, or some cells are affected and others aren't. There's partial. There can be duplications and like different parts of the genes move around. It's really kind of crazy that more, and probably as it gets more advanced, we'll all find out we have something wrong with us, which gets a little scary because then they'll be screening for that and try to get rid of other issues like that, further down the line. So that's a slippery slope when you get into genetics, I feel like. But we found it, the group of SOFT, and it has been hugely critical for our support system. So they have annual conferences until COVID hit. We haven't had the last couple years, but actually whenever it is held next, it's going to be here in Roanoke, Virginia. But it's throughout the United States, and there are international members as well. But it's just a chance to come, and we have Facebook groups and things like that. But there's also, it's www.trisomy.org. There is a tremendous amount of research and literature and stories. There's information on there for professionals, which is where Dr. Hamill's story is at, and kind of his research and other published research that shows with intervention that children do live when they're given those chances. But that family-to-family connection, you can go on and put a question out there and have all these parents chime in who either have similar experiences or at least can point you in the right direction. To give you information. And so oftentimes before any of us are heading to a doctor's appointment, we'll put a question out there, ask for information, and be able to go into the doctor's office and say, other children with this same condition experience this is how it was handled for them. And it just is empowering to feel like you're not going to the doctor's office without any kind of information, because the doctors don't know a lot of times, because it is such a rare condition, and our kids do handle things differently. But you can go and be empowered by other people's experiences, and just that support and understanding. I have to be careful sometimes because so many children don't make it, and it's hard to log on. And every day you see kids that have passed away, or expecting parents that don't have their child anymore, or have stillborn babies and things like that. It's emotional. It's very hard. And so there are times I've had to kind of step away a little bit, because it can be very, it is emotional. I mean, every time, anybody loses their child, it's very hard to see that. Right. And, for us families that have been on this journey together for a long time, some of us have met, some of us haven't, but you become very emotionally invested in that whole family, not just the child, but especially the child too, and to see struggles that they're having, or see them come to the end of their life. It's very hard, and takes a toll each time that we lose a child in our community. But we still try to celebrate their life and remember them, for all the wonderful things that they did contribute to.
Right, absolutely.
So I'm so thankful for SOFT, and then just the networks to other families, not with the same condition, but just locally. Like I said, I had that one parent, and it was funny, during the pregnancy, I really was not in a space that I could talk to other people about it. That's why I had that journal with Madison. I wasn't in a place that I was ready to talk to other parents. I wasn't in a place to talk to other moms. And even when Madison was first, and we have to, we're all at different places in our journey, and it's emotional in different ways at different times, and we each process grief differently. So one of the things we talk about too within SOFT, and it helps me understand, is that my child is alive, and that's wonderful, but that doesn't mean I don't have things that I grieve. There are milestones that you grieve differently at different times. Kids doing things in a certain timeline that aren't going to happen for Madison, and so it's kind of this, you go through the grief cycle at different times, not because you've lost your child, but because things are different than what you would expect, and it hits you at different times weird.
Right, that's very true.
I love the springtime, I love the sunshine, I love all the new life that comes with spring, but I'll be honest, it's a very hard time for me too, because Madison had another surgery, a kidney surgery, that did not go very well. Ultimately, she made it through, but had a lot of challenges at the end of March, many years ago, when she was 2.5 when that happened. She was born in April, and my birthday and her birthday are only 3 days apart, so I turned 30 and I had her 3 days later. But even just her birthday brings a lot of emotions. So much joy, but also trepidation and wondering, are we getting closer now to having less birthdays with her, because she is older, and, she's in the very few minority now of kids that are still alive. And so each birthday comes with joy, but also that mixed emotion of, I hope we get to see another one. And so spring just comes with all these mixed bag of emotions that I feel like I have to process through. And while most of them are joyful and happy, there are other things that aren't, that it stirs back up in me emotionally. And so, I have to walk that line, and, people that know me kind of give me a little bit of space sometimes in the springtime, because it's a lot to process.
There was a tiny turtle. His name was Tiny Tim. We put him in a bathtub to see if he could swim. He drank up all the water, gulp, 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 and ate up all the soap. Now he's sick in bed with a bubble in his throat. Bubble, 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 pop.
And so now you have 2 children.
Yes.
So you have Emma, and as well as with Madison. And so was there any fears over getting pregnant again?
So because it's not something that is hereditary, it would have been like lightning hitting twice for it to have happened again. So statistically, it shouldn't have been something we would have been concerned about. But we were offered the chance. At the time, we would have had to go to UVA for what's called chronic villi sampling. So basically about 6 weeks in pregnancy, they do what's something similar to an amniocentesis. And you find out earlier in pregnancy, again, the end result is so that you can terminate earlier, really is what it's for. They don't tell you all that, but basically they're testing earlier in pregnancy so you can terminate for a healthy pregnancy. We did not want to go that route. It was, again, not something that I felt good about, and I said, I'm not going to do anything extra. I will do the basic standard pregnancy testing, and should we need to do anything else, then we'll talk about that, but I don't plan to do anything to intervene earlier. Mm-hmm. So Madison was about 2.5 when she finally outgrew her bassinet, and we moved her into a crib in a different room, and then we had Emma, because we had finally been alone in a room after 2.5 years. So in the pregnancy with Emma, daggone if that alpha fetoprotein test didn't come back high again, but it came back skewed for Down syndrome. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. I can't do this again. Like, I really can't do this again. But also at the same time, I never could have thought about choosing something different either. So we get sent back down to Roanoke to the same maternal fetal specialist. Mm-hmm. We talked with the genetic counselor ahead of time, and she's like, there's absolutely no reason that there should be anything wrong. Like, I just can't fathom that this is correct. And so she went back and called the lab again with the blood work, and she really felt strongly. She was like, if the due date were like 3 days different, this wouldn't have been flagged at all. She's like, I really think it's a miscalculated due date, because I wasn't for sure, on the due date or conception date or whatever. So she, before we even had met with the other doctor, she said, I really think it's a miscalculated due date, and kind of gave us some reassurance. But my blood pressure is skyrocketing. We're in the same building with all this with Madison, where we had all these hard discussions, and like I said, really kind of had to fight, to keep Madison. So my blood pressure was off the charts. So I was like, we're already here. I need to know. I can't get through this whole pregnancy wondering. So they do the ultrasound. Everything looks fine. They don't have any reason for concern. But I'm like, let's do the amniocentesis just to be sure. So we did that, and everything came back fine. So Emma, whatever normal is, I don't think there is such thing as normal. Whatever normal is, she did not have any genetic issues that they, screened for. So she is a, healthy, thriving 10-year-old that's going on 20. And she is the best little big sister ever because she's far outgrown Madison in size. Madison is 12, but she is like 44 pounds and little bitty, little skinny tiny thing. So Emma has certainly outgrown her in size and weight and things like that, and very much cares for her in a big sister kind of way. So we have to say younger and older instead of big and little because those don't actually equate for us. But they are amazing together. And the best thing we ever did for Madison developmental wise was to give her a sibling. And I'm so glad we did. Mike and I got married later in life. I was 29 and he was 32. And so, we knew we wanted to have a family and we knew we wanted to have them close together. So we, very early on after marriage had Madison, and wanted to go ahead and still have Emma. Even though there was I wasn't sure at first how to balance the medical issues and working full time and, how do you do all that and have a second child as well. But I'm so glad that we did because Emma's, they're both a ray of sunshine in their own ways, but Emma's just brought a lot of joy for all of us. And like I said, developmentally has been amazing for Madison because she truly has, made Madison want to crawl and to keep up and to pull to stand and to, and we did more as a family where we would go to the park and we would have Madison walk the steps and to get on the slide and, do things like that I'm not sure we would have done as much without having another child to kind of push us outside of our comfort zone that we'd gotten in with keeping Madison a little more contained and in her bubble.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So I love you mentioned about milestones. So I know that Madison has had so many milestones.
She has.
Oh my gosh. Is there a few of the milestones that really stand out to you over the years?
Well, early on, so some of the services and stuff that you get early on are called individual family service plans. It's kind of like early intervention. But they come out to ask you so you set goals for your child through early intervention. And so they came out to ask us what we wanted to do. And the lady sits down and she's like, well, what do you want to see Madison doing in a year? I absolutely lost it and sobbed uncontrollably. I was like, nobody's ever asked me that question. I don't know what I want my child to do in a year. I've been told she's never going to be alive in a year. I'm like, I've got to really think about that because I had never allowed myself to think what I want her to do in a year. I was trying to think about getting through the day and tomorrow. And so I had to take some time. And so our initial goals were her to be able to sit up at the table in a high chair while we have dinner, to go to the park as a family, to be able to put up something in our backyard for her to play on, and just basic things like that. Because I had never gone there in my head to think, what does a year from now look like with our child being alive? And so, she probably thought I was crazy at first, but I was like, you don't understand the weight of that question.
Wow.
And so that made me think in a different headspace than I ever had before, going through early intervention. So even just being able to hold her head up was a big deal. That was a huge thing for her to be able to hold her head up on her own and use her own muscles to do that. Seeing her pull to stand or to crawl. Still to this day, and because she's fluctuated health-wise with different issues and seizures have really taken over life the past couple of years, to see her have mobility back that she had lost for a while, and able to crawl around the room. So our kitchen and living room is kind of set up circular. It's got, a door on both sides and she'll crawl around, to mess into stuff. And it's just wonderful to see her be able to make a mess, to open a drawer and pull stuff out and make a mess. It's
yes.
This is, even though she's 12 and that's something that, is kind of an infant toddler kind of skill is still such a big deal for her.
Right.
Or the first time that she that she puts her arm around, like locks her hands and like pops your head off hugging you, like that's the best thing in the world, to get to feel her
Strength.
She doesn't get to say I love you, but that is her saying I love you, in those hugs, or she'll crawl over and reach your hands up to be picked up, and it's just the most wonderful. It just melts your heart, completely. And seeing her interactions, like Emma brings her so much joy, and I can't not talk about best friend Grace. So Madison went to preschool and started school at 3 years old, and in the 4th grade preschool class, Madison and Grace were together, and she's been best friend Grace ever since then. So still to this day, Grace comes to our house, is at our house often, and so now it's Emma and Madison and Grace are all best friends. They're opening mermaid spas together.
I heard about this. I heard.
But to see the connection that they have, and Grace was not just a helper, but a true friend, and they have grown in their friendship through the years. So Madison and Grace are both 12, Emma's 10. But to see them play together, and they include Madison in everything that they do. They find ways to include her. One will pick her up under the arms, and one gets her feet, and they carry her down the hallway, and they give her a spa session. And they're planning. Their goal is to live together, the 3 of them, when they grow up. So they have like this little app that they design a house for, and they have Madison's special chair, and they have Madison's special bed, and they have all these things worked out in their little app on her house. But they truly talk about, and I won't be surprised if one day if it happens, if the 3 of them don't live together in some capacity, because like they are adamant about it, and it's something that their heart truly desires. And I say to them all the time, I'm like, well, as you grow up, you might change your mind about that. I don't want them to feel like they're like locked into that, and don't go on these other great adventures in life. But it may well happen. Who knows? The future will see, when we get to that time in our life where we're at. But their heart very much wants that. And I joke with them all the time, like they feed her. They do everything of her care basically besides catheterize. I haven't had them do that yet. But if the need came by, I'm sure that they could. They watch me do it all the time. But they truly want to take care of her and love on her. They don't see it as a burden. They see it as, this is how we show her that we love her, and this is how we participate with her and do things with her. And she's very much a part of their day-to-day play, and what they do, and they find ways to include her. I know I posted not long ago a video of them skating up and down our hallway where Madison was in her walker, and she was in her own way skating in this supported structure up and down the hallway where they were flying on their skates, so they find ways to include her, which is just amazing.
And in Madison's mind, she's just right in there with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Perfectly. This is great. There's no difference.
Yeah.
And so when you talked about how this is the best thing for her developmental state, I mean, I cannot imagine anything else than her feeling like she's normal.
Right.
A roller derby in the house today. Villi's rollerblades and walker.
There goes your good job. Yep. Okay. And you ready, Madison? She's like pulling me back.
I know. She's got her legs going fast. Good job. I love it.
Angie, thinking over, where you've been and where you are today, I can tell that there's still a lot of hope in the journey that's still to come. And I love you talking about how there was a time where you didn't really go in your mind about what the next year is going to look like and that progression and the next birthday. Do you think that it's gotten a little easier for you to project ahead at this time?
I think it has, because she has overcome so much in her little life. Seizures are a scary thing, and that has been the battle the past 3 years, I guess. So, along with, honest to goodness, if we had to list off things that are wrong, we could scroll out all the different, labels of things that are wrong in her little body, but somehow it keeps plugging and going through, and she's kind of found her own way to navigate this world despite all the labels of things that are wrong with her. But I do feel like, however much time we're given, I thought I was hoping for 12 seconds or 12 minutes. I've already gotten 12 years. How can I ever be upset about that? You know, I've been given so much more time than I ever thought was possible. I hope I have 12 more years and years beyond that, but I don't know. Tomorrow's not guaranteed for any of us. Like I said, we are hyper aware of that for Madison. And with seizures, it does. The same day that she had the roller skating that morning, that afternoon, she had clusters of seizures and we had to give her rescue medications. And, you know, the next couple of days were not good. So it changes from minute to minute. You know, not every day is good all day long. You know, so something I try to be careful of too is, and this is just something I personally do, I try to get lots of videos and pictures of the good times, and I don't really take pictures or video in the hospital and stuff, because that's not what I want to come up on my memories. You know, I want to remember the good times. Like all that through heart surgery, we have one picture of her in the hospital. And I was like, I need this one picture to just, you know, she got heart surgery. That was something that happened, but I don't take many pictures or videos of that, because I don't want those to be what stays in my mind. I want the happy, good times to stay in my mind, to be most prominent. Not to disregard that other times happened, but I want to hold on to all the happy, bottle up every happy moment that I can. And I think I've been more aware again lately, just because the seizures have been so much worse. I've taken more pictures and videos again lately, because it's like, what if I don't have tomorrow? I want to capture this moment right now. You know, just snuggling in the chair with her and to be able to remember how good that felt. You know, I think we should all probably live that way, and I think COVID has been a reminder of that, you know, for a lot of us, that, you know, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and just bottle up every happy moment we get and value our family and not take each other for granted, because we just don't know what's around the corner. And we've had to do that for Madison all along, but it's a good lesson for all of us.
Absolutely.
To have.
Would there be, Angie, anything else if you were to share to a mom that is maybe this is new to her? She's got the diagnosis, and she's getting ready to embark on a new journey that she's never had to imagine.
Yeah.
Would there be anything else you would want to share with her?
I just, you know, I always go back to hope, not to give up hope. Numbers are one thing. Lean into your faith if you have faith, whatever that is. And, you know, lean into your family and just trust your instincts. And don't have regrets about any decisions you make. Just go with your peace, follow hope, and know that you're doing the best thing you can for your child and your family. And live without regrets. You make the most of each day. You know, I can't discount the amount of support that we've been given. You know, be it through our parents. I mean, my mom has been critical in Madison's care and allowing us to continue to still work. You know, just the emotional support that our families have given us, but also financial support at times. You know, when we've encountered, you know, times of long stays in the hospital and things like that. You know, it's expensive to eat in the hospital for a month or more at a time. People don't think about that. It's very expensive. You know, and just giving us money to have meals to eat on and things like that, you know, other people that don't live that life don't think about. You know, gas money back and forth when we've had to travel for things like that. So our families have been hugely helpful with that. Our coworkers have been hugely helpful with that. You know, our job's been understanding when we've had to take time off or take a step back from, you know, responsibilities. I've had to, you know, because I'm so passionate about it, I really was involved in the Parent Resource Center, both in Montgomery County and in Radford, and different issues came up that I had to take a step back from that, you know, from work, because I couldn't give my all to that and take care of Madison and our nucleus of our family. So, you know, there's that give and take in life, that there are times things are really going well and I can pour out into the community more, or, you know, do more for others. And there are times, like during this time with COVID, we've kind of had to just pull in, and we focused on our family, and we've stayed in our protective bubble, and you know, our love still goes out, but we're not out and about with other people right now. And so, you know, we've had to ride that kind of ebb and flow of life, of times that we are the ones giving and times that we have had to be okay and humble ourselves and being receiving of help. And being vulnerable enough to ask for help is hard to do. You know, to say, when people are saying, how can we help? And being honest about saying, well, I need gas money right now to get to where I need to go to see my daughter, or I need to get to the hospital because I want to stay there with her. You know, it's hard to do, and to put yourself in that position to be okay and to be able to accept help when it's offered, or to be able to be honest, just to vocalize what you need to help the most.
But in a way, don't you think that helps you not to feel alone? You know, so when people...
It does, and we've always had an enormous amount of support, and we wouldn't have survived, you know, through this journey without the support that we've been given. And sometimes it's just, you know, our friends and family, you know, through social media and Facebook and stuff, just saying we're sending you love and prayers. And the power of prayer is huge, and I know it's gotten us through many hospital stays and long nights and, you know, things like that. So support has been a tremendous amount of why we've had the success that we've had, and why I can get up and face each day, because, and if I can't, then I can call my mom and my mom will come down, or Micah tags in, or I can tag out and take a day and say, I need to just go to bed and get some sleep. And there are times you have to do that, and to be okay with that too, and let somebody else take care of Madison or Emma or whoever else, you know, for the day, and tap out sometimes and just go in your own little bubble.
And it sounds like, Angie, that you and your husband both have just been immensely involved. So you and Micah have both been engaged in this whole process.
Absolutely.
And I can't imagine what the toll could possibly be on a marriage with any kind of struggle of any child, of any situation, truly. But hopefully, in a way, do you think it's brought you closer?
You know, the times that Madison's going through hard times are the times that we are the strongest, because we have to rely on each other, and we have to go through those, you know, decisions together. It's never been just one or the other of us making decisions. It's always been, you know, shared decision making with those things. There are times he's the stronger one and I'm struggling. There are times that he's struggled and I'm the stronger one. But, you know, us being together has been huge for that. And it sounds ludicrous, but I really think like Scrabble and card games and car rides have saved our marriage. Because how do you sit and have some of those hard conversations about, are we going to do heart surgery or not? What are we going to do about this? Or, so, you know, it's hard to sit down and face each other like this and say, let's have this really hard conversation. So we would play Scrabble. You know, it takes a long time to play Scrabble. And we would have those conversations over a game or playing cards, or we'd go for a car ride. And instead of having to look at each other, you can look out the window and be talking about, well, what if she doesn't make it? You know, and having a tear stream down your face without having to look at each other and completely lose it. So I think we've had to find some coping mechanisms like that to help us through. And times that we had long hospital stays, you know, we would have games and stuff with us, and people are like, how can you play a game like that? It's like, we're gonna go crazy if we don't do something. You know, and finding sometimes inappropriate things to laugh about. I mean, Madison loved her little heart when she was first born, and just that whole muscle coordination. She had like one little eye was like a marble in her head, and it would just go, and he would be like, boop, I'm hitting your reset button, you know, which was like, people were like, what are you doing? But it would like make us laugh hysterically. And so sometimes finding just things to laugh about that maybe nobody else understands, but you and your support person, or, you know, whoever you're with, but finding laughter and joy in little things. You know, we go to the hospital and like he says he gains 20 pounds because he eats every chocolate chip cookie he can find, and hospitals have big ones, which they shouldn't. But just finding little coping things to make it through. And, you know, we don't have, the last time we went out on a date was probably 2 years ago, and that was like for a day date. We don't do that very often. But the girls, Emma and Grace and Madison, sent us downstairs to have a candlelit dinner the other night. They stayed upstairs, they watched Madison, Michael ordered out some food, and we went downstairs and they lit a candle, and we sat in our basement and had a date for dinner. So, you know, they're even, you know, at their ages of 12 and 10 thinking about us too, and like wanting us to find, and they were like shooing us back downstairs. We ate, we came back upstairs. They're like, no, go away, go back downstairs, like y'all need time. But like they loved having, you know, feeling like they were doing something special for us too. And so it's fun, you know, each age of parenthood always brings different stages and joys in different ways, but it's really fun now that we can feel comfortable that they're fine upstairs with Madison and we can go downstairs and do that, or, we might go watch a movie sometime and stay longer.
Right.
Just different things like that. It doesn't have to always be somebody outside of the house, but like the girls are really fine with her for a little while. To have a chance to step away and think about our marriage, because we haven't had a lot of time to put a focus on our marriage as we would need to, and that our marriage deserves. So maybe as they're getting a little older, we can try that a little more and spending time together, because we haven't had that much.
That's exciting. I love it. Has there been opportunities where you have been able to go back and see some of the doctors that started this adventure with you and Madison, that 10, 12 years later have maybe saw her for the first time, or maybe second, third, fourth time, but they're still amazed and still using her story in their practice to make different decisions?
So the genetic counselor's office there in Roanoke, I know that, so when we went, it was just one doctor that was there. I'm not sure if he's still in practice or not. He was probably near retirement age then. But there are quite a few other doctors within the practice there now. I know that at least one person from there, but I think sometimes we've had more have come to our talks when we do the Virginia Tech School of Medicine talk. We do that each fall. And even the genetic, there's a doctor that's a geneticist, Dr. Doherty. She comes each year to that talk and then follows Madison as well. And then they have had times that they have called us and asked us to talk with other family members or other families that have gone through it. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of any other families in this area that their child has lived beyond, but usually they'll call and ask us if we're comfortable if they share information. We say absolutely yes, and some families have called and some haven't. Again, I don't want to cold call somebody going through it and them not be in a place to want to talk. I was not in a place to want to talk during pregnancy either, so I have certainly respect that. So we have had times to connect like that, but the doctor that was the neonatologist, he was in Texas. I think they've moved again since then. But it's funny because a trisomy family in Texas realized they shared the same doctor, and in our conversations on social media, have realized that doctor was a huge instrument in little Zoe's life, and she's 4 now. And so, do I know all of the ways Madison is impacted? Or not just Madison, but all of our kids have impacted doctors. I don't know all of that, but I know that there's a lot more that's happened than I'm even aware of. And even Madison just bringing people to faith, and believing in something more, believing in the power of prayer. I've had some family members that said they have questioned things, but her life has proven to them there must be a higher power, to see her through all of this. So, there are people that have had Madison in their prayer journals that I'll never meet, but, I know that she's had an impact on their life, and, just have to believe that, like I said, there is a bigger value and purpose to her life than I'll ever truly understand, and just trust that God's going to use her and us on whatever platforms he can, really to bring people to him, ultimately, hopefully, because without him, she wouldn't be here.
I know. Well, Angie, I think today this has been great, and
Thank you.
I hope that it's given a lot of hope to people that
never give up hope.
It's
the most powerful thing.
Yeah.
And whatever you're facing in life.
Yeah, that's right. Never give up hope. Thank you guys so much for watching today. We hope that this blessed you and blessed your mind and blessed your heart and blessed the possibilities of what's to come. So just like Angie said there at the end, just never give up hope. Never give up hope. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Angie.